Wistmoor. Today's divergence involves the relation of He-Man's setting with Age of Sigmar's. The setting of Age of Sigmar may well as be Eternia, a wild and bold claim, I know. But you saw the thumbnail, right? It's confirmed science at this point. However, this is not the only proof I have to present. Once we analyze the connections with documentary evidence between both properties, you might also administer this life-altering sentiment to the minds of your fellow mortals of the nerd kind. Eternia be the key.
I could write a book about what you don't know.
Well, you can't understand a setting unless you understand the genre it operates within. Age of Sigmar is self-billed as epic fantasy. Some say it's mythic fantasy, but really, it's not either. It's old, pulp-style Sword and Planet, a setting where anything goes.
We could put anything into He-Man.
Now I get it. All those professed genres sound much cooler than Sword and Planet. But do they have the same heavy metal zeal? You know, this is the same pulpy, action-oriented genre from which Star Wars was born, as well as Kroll, heavy metal, Flash Gordon, and the illustrious Ice Pirates.
He was bigger than Star Wars, bigger than Transformers.
Yeah, we'll get to that. And that's as toy lines go, but I'm still in the middle of a point here. Eternia itself is the central planet of its universe. The other known planet is named Etheria, to which He-Man and She-Ra travel back and forth. The mortal realms are essentially a flat earther's cosmos of disk worlds. Hysh is the sun, Olgu the shadow realm that eclipses Hysh to bring night. Also, each realm is separated by an abyss, so we're talking planetary here, space. Even the illustrations of the realms harken to ancient astrological drawings. And both have dimensional doorways for travel, so they both operate in transdimensional planetary fantasy worlds. Thus, Sword and Planet.
Fantasy, action fantasy, or whatever it is.
And you flash them in front of a group of boys. Which one do you relate to? Which one do you want to be? Which one do you like the best?
And we basically determined that the Frank Rosetta barbarian style would be the best potential for sales.
Okay, what else do they share in common? Skeletor and Archaon are both the embodiment of evil and corruption. They're timeless mortals of cunning and intellect who fight an endless war for the heart of the universe against He-Man and Sigmar, respectively. Skeletor has his mutant henchmen, so does Archaon. The Realms of 8 Points, where Archaon has his seat of power, is a land of mutations and insidious corruption, sometimes called the Realm of Chaos. And all big bad bosses need their own castle. But that's a freebie and I won't belabor it. There is an even more obvious connection. Both Sigmar and He-Man have ultra-powerful, magical, lightning-infused weapons. One can fell a god beast in one blow. The other, gives him power.
Damn. He-Man.
Now there's even more than surface-level similarities, and that's what I really want to focus on here. Their evolutions both share a common track. Figures first, setting second, then story or lore, driven by the previous factors. And all of these are inspired by the art of Frank Frazetta.
For the first time, it was the toy line that started it all, not the other way around.
And it became bigger than anybody could have ever dreamt about.
After that, you saw all these toy and animated properties coming out.
This kind of kitchen sink approach works because of the genre. Both companies planned to create as much leeway for themselves as possible, so they could go wild with their themes and their figures.
I was immediately blown away the first time I saw it. Every figure that was out at the time was the little 4-inch skinny figure, and this thing is a 5.5-inch super ripped, larger-than-life character, just his muscles busting out.
Looked like he could break a Jedi in half, with his bare hands.
The same groundbreaking style of dynamic figures was heralded by the transition to Age of Sigmar from Warhammer Fantasy Battles. The new designs had epic motion and characters seemingly breaking free of their bases. Many were reminiscent of those old Frazetta paintings. As for the development of the stories, we know they grew out of the figures themselves.
So the first customer we had was Child World, which was the #2 retailer to Toys R Us at the time.
We get through the whole thing, and it's really going well, and one of the guys says, you know, Star Wars has a movie, and the kids know the story, and they go buy the characters. What have you guys got?
It was my job on the line. So
Mark says, oh, didn't we tell you?
Well, we're going to have a comic book series.
It'd be free inside with each package.
Kids will know all about He-Man and Masters of the Universe from this comic book.
And they said, oh, that's a great idea. And we leave, and I said, Mark, when did you think of that? They said, just now.
What happened was that we ran out of tooling money. So we needed a vehicle, but we didn't have any money for it. So Paul Cleveland put on his thinking hat.
I had managed the Big Jim line, which was an international-only product by then. I knew there were tools that already existed that we didn't have to pay for. And this tiger from the Big Jim line, Big Jim was a 9.5-inch doll, so the tiger was scaled to a 9 to 10-inch character. Tony Guerrero was the guy that sculpted He-Man. And Tony looks at me and says, Paul, you can't do it. It's not to scale. It doesn't look real. I said, Tony, just do it. And I walked out. And I come back the next day, and he says, I need to show you this. And here's this green tiger with orange stripes. And he said, see, look. I said, wow, that looks great. And he goes, oh. And they said, well, Paul, it still doesn't matter. It's as big as a horse. And I said, I don't give a f. If it's as big as a horse, put a saddle on it. And I walked out again. So 2 days later, I come back, and there's a saddle on it, and He-Man's sitting on it, and I go, damn. And that became Battle Cat.
The old world was destroyed, and Games Workshop needed a new setting. And we got the Mortal Realms, which really just started as these worlds where each magical type got its own realm. And there wasn't much fleshed out at the release of the new game. So was the ideation process as haphazard as what we just saw with He-Man's? We don't know. But many feel that the new game was missing the rich lore of Warhammer Fantasy. Let's talk more in depth about how transitions affected each property. For He-Man, the big transition was from toy line and comic book to Saturday morning cartoon, and Age of Sigmar's first iteration after ending the old world.
We had this very dark, serious interpretation of these characters, and then the cartoon comes out.
Thanks to the animated series, Mattel's profits were about as far from wimpy as you could get.
It boosted the sales dramatically of the product line, and it gave us all kinds of licensing income for comic books and wallpaper and sheets and shoes and t-shirts, you name it.
By the power of Grayskull, He-Man is here!
This became the model from then on for the toy industry.
Hey, heroes, how about some quick? Yeah!
And soon enough, Mattel's Golden Boy had done the unthinkable, outshining their Golden Girl.
After Masters' first year, the combined boys' toys were, for the first time, larger in sales than all the girls' toys, which caused all of the girls in the girls' toys area to go berserk.
Now imagine if Age of Sigmar had eclipsed 40K. As preposterous as it sounds, I'm sure Games Workshop would have loved that. But the whimsy of the He-Man cartoon did not have the same effect as the whimsical rules that Age of Sigmar dared to put before its customers. Fresh off the salt wastelands of their self-immolation that was canceling Warhammer Fantasy Battles, Age of Sigmar was short on customer goodwill, and the strange theatric rules were met with derision. In hindsight, many of them were entertaining, but perhaps entertaining in watching someone else look the fool. One rule had an effect if you were to kneel in-game for any reason. Another prompted you to whinge like a dwarf, or hold a drink aloft and proclaim, "For the lady!" Others had players comparing their ages or mustache sizes. But strangest of all was the one where, if the model talked back to you, you'd get a nice boon. Surely these rules were meant to be more engaging and get players into the game, but they were more like fourth wall breaking jokes worthy of a Deadpool wisecrack. And I bring this point up mainly to address how the mood of the game affects the stories that unfold on the battlefield. And this degree of fancifulness was not the idea many players had in mind for their narrative gameplay. I should note that Age of Sigmar's lore has become more likable, more fleshed out with cool original characters and intrigues, themes, and in the years since. Games Workshop has been learning from their missteps. So what do you think? How do you feel about these revelations? Are they truly revelatory?
We burned it into their little pea brains.
And honestly, I know they aren't a one-for-one match, but the neat concept between the two are the way in which the worlds were built to have as much fun as possible, without getting too zany for their markets. Lessons learned, hopefully, on Games Workshop's side.
A little, yeah.
And if you disagree, well, I welcome your feedback. I'm building the channel aesthetic around the vintage pulpy science fantasy style of the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. I'll try to incorporate artwork from the time period as much as possible. And if I really could, I'd play Hawkwind in every episode. Also, this discussion was a fun vehicle to share a facet of this channel's content approach, and a chance to share many intertwining passions of mine. The next love I wish to share with you is the joy of one tribe within the Age of Eternia, Sigmar.
What happened?
So that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out. Take care, have fun, and hope to see you on the next one.
There was a really wonderful moment in today's adventure story.
It was when He-Man lifted the whole top of the mountain.
That was incredible, but that wasn't it. The most wonderful moment was...